Yep.
So anyway, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, same here. Same to you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I want to begin everything with, if you look at the calendar right now, 4 years ago, all of it came to a grinding halt. How did you survive the pandemic, and how did it subsequently change you?
Man, that's a great question because I don't know if you had a chance to look through my whole story, but I
Yeah.
opened a company when I was 21, a mortgage company, kind of on a whim, kind of by luck. It was 2001, so rates were good, and just kind of dumb luck and a lot of hard work. And I built it big. You know, we had almost 100 employees at one point, and then '07 came, and from '07 to 2010 we went from bringing in millions of dollars a month to losing close to 100 grand a month every single month. And I bled for 2.5 years, and I went from being a multimillionaire to homeless in a 2.5 year period of time when that happened in '07. And so, while you're going through it, it was one of the most painful things you ever experienced. On the other side of it, you look back and say, wow, I got some really cool lessons out of that. And one of the lessons was, I don't like debt. I don't like payments. I don't like, because like, I subscribe to that. If we work really, really hard, then someday we can have this incredible life. And I agree with that to some extent, but like I was passing up everything that mattered because I was working 15 hours a day. And then something like, a market collapse happens, like COVID, that you can't plan for, you can't prevent, nothing we could have done about that. You couldn't have foreseen it, right?
Yeah.
And so this time when it happened, I was in a different place. I was in a different place from a debt standpoint. I didn't have bills, I didn't have payments. I had a really good office manager that swirled away money. REI Blueprint was my real estate investing education business, and we were a live event business. So when coronavirus happens, guess what? No more live events, and so everything that we had scheduled all around the country just came to a screeching halt. I mean, we couldn't do events anywhere. And I remember like the trauma from what happened in '07, like still inside of you. I immediately start like go straight into fear mode of, oh my God, what are we gonna do? We're gonna lose all this bad stuff's gonna happen. And then I remembered, I'm like, there's nothing anybody can take away from me. I don't owe anybody anything on it, and it was such a cool insight of like, wow, that was the lesson that I was supposed to learn from that. But meanwhile, I think we just kind of adopted kind of a different mission. My team was still kind of freaking out a little bit. And I sat down and I said, look, how do we reach and impact more people without doing live events than we did with doing live events? We got to ask better questions. And that was the question that we thought was, how can we reach and impact more people without live events than we can with live events? And that caused us to start doing, more web-based trainings, more internet tech stuff, more interviews and things like that could help us reach people in a way that wasn't traveling around the country on stage.
And that's the formula for success. Like you just said, you got to come up and you got to answer things in a different way. It's just really kind of rearranging the way that you think, because it's all still out there. It's just
Right.
fragmented. It's just kind of scattered in a different way, you
That's
know?
right.
Um, so let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids says, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that child?
I'm a peak performance coach. I mean, I work with people and business, and sometimes it's business and then the people, right? But I mean, what I do more than anything is I kind of zero in. What's the one thing that people say that they want in their life? Like, for years I told myself I wanted to go to the gym, and every day it was on my calendar. I'm going to the gym, and then a new loan application came in or an appointment came in, and I skipped it and I didn't go in for years and years and years. So what I do is, what's the one or two things that you would tell me that are a level 10 importance in your life? But if I look at your actual actions, somebody on the outside looking in would rate them as a 2 or 3, because we say that they're so important to us, but yet they're not happening over. Like, we have the tools, but we're not going to get it. I help people bridge that gap. I help people make those things happen. A lot of times it's in business. A lot of times it's in, whether it's, weight loss or activity, or whether it's business or it's relationship wise, or whatever that is. I help people bridge that gap.
What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I want to be a fighter pilot, man. I was a Top Gun kid,
Yeah.
I always thought that that was super cool. I came from a split household, so I didn't always have a whole lot of positive role models growing up. But that always excited me.
But that's the one thing about your bio too. I noticed that you came from a rough childhood, but you've always been successful. You've always been really good with business and being an entrepreneur. How did that happen? How did those seeds become the success that now is a coach that leads people to this place that's making them successful?
I mean, for me and for a lot of other people, I think our subconscious has 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. 90% of them are the exact same thoughts as yesterday and the day before and the day before. So I like to say, like, none of us experience reality as it actually is. We experience it through the map that we've created from our past experiences. Those are the eyes that we see it through. I watched this Oprah interview where she interviewed two twin brothers, one of them lifetime in prison, one of them multimillionaire. And I'll fast forward the story, but she asked them the same question. If you were to attribute, she asked the guy in prison, if you were to attribute one reason why you've spent an entire life in and out of prison, you don't have a family, you're broke, all these kind of things, what would it be? And he said, because my dad was physically abusive. He beat the crap out of us. He was an alcoholic. He hit my mom. He hit me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then she went to the millionaire brother's house and said, if you were to attribute one thing to all your success, what would it be? And he said, I'll tell you exactly what it is, because my dad was an alcoholic. He hit me. He hit me. Exact same response,
Yeah.
but they gave it a different meaning. And that's kind of what I mean by map of the world. So we all have these stories and these beliefs that start at childhood, and we adopt them. And then once we adopt them, our mind looks for more and more reasons to make them real. And so I think the biggest thing that impacts us in that world more than anything is these stories and beliefs that most of us aren't even aware that we have. We don't even necessarily know why we feel the certain way that we feel about things, but it almost always stems back. And then, this thing repeating over to us every single day, this one experience that we had that we thought was real. But if we were to rewind time as a 40-year-old, it might have a drastically different meaning than it had at 7 or 8, right?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm
It's
gonna
wild.
I'm gonna rephrase that question from
Yeah.
Oprah and ask you, when you look back on your life, who's been a hero? Who's been a motivator? Who's been someone that has definitely been a fuel for you to get where you're at?
You know, one of the most I saw my first self-development type speaker or event. Well, I didn't see him first. I read the book Awaken the Giant Within, which is Tony Robbins' book. And I got so much out of that, and I just started adopting. I didn't have a morning routine. I didn't have like this recipe for success. My mom is a beautiful person. She's a nurse. She was raising 3 boys without any without any help from my dad, and so she did everything she could. But she wasn't, and she just loved us to death. She put us first. But that was the first time I came across somebody that was talking about being a better me, that was talking about growing, that was talking about you can do anything you want if you believe in it. With what I mean, and there's steps in order to do that. But I saw him speak for the first time, and I just took hundreds of pages of notes, and I was like, wow. I didn't realize that's what I mean. It was like seeing something epic for the very first time. I didn't even know those things were real.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Every day you wake up, you have a motivation to be you, to help others, to evolve. What is that motivation for you every day to get up and do what you do?
You know, I spoke on a stage for the first time in the real estate investing space. After the mortgage company collapsed, I had a decent amount of real estate. Now it's not necessarily on the investing side, but just period. And I went and saw a guy speak. I went to this free 4-day training, and he was talking about real estate investing. And so we didn't know where else to go. I mean, we were broke, we were wiped out, and so that was the route that we went. And I remember thinking, we have to have a new blueprint. We have to have something new that we can operate off of, that we can grow from again. And we did 111 houses our first year. And the guy who mentored me, the guy I hired to mentor me, asked if I would come speak on stage and teach people how to do what I had just done. And, because I was basically homeless when I started. And at first I said no because it was in my own backyard. And I remember the guy said, you can either have a scarcity mentality or you can have an abundance mentality. You choose, Jason. And so I called him back a couple weeks later and he's like, you know what? I'll do it. And so I told this real estate investing story to a crowd of like 300 people of how I was wiped out. And there's a line of people that talked to me at the end. That was my first time really ever speaking on a stage. And one guy came up to me and he said, Jason, yesterday I tried to commit suicide. And hearing your story today tells me that, that if you can do it, I can do it. And for the first time in like 10 years, I have a whole new outlook on life. And he gave me a hug and he was crying. And then there was like 10 more people behind him that, not stories to that extreme, but very similar stories. And that was not my intent. I mean, I'm glad that it happened, but I had no idea. I mean, I was teaching something that I thought was insignificant. Yeah. And that was the first time in my life that I was like, wow, that's what God put me here to do. That was the first time it was ever clear to me. I've always kind of had a gift for business stuff, but it's never really been like this ultimate passion of mine. But having a positive impact on people's lives, being able to feel like I'm making a difference every day, that's a driver more than any amount of money. And it can sound cliche, but I had business success early. We've had those things, and it's like there's plenty of people, millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires that have all the money in the world, but they're not fulfilled. They're not happy. I mean, you hear about we've got like Robin Williams. I mean, people that have everything.
Yeah, that's heavy, man. Yeah, that's wonderful. So let me ask you this. You have to dispense good advice to people as a coach. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Good thing. I know for me, same guy that I told you about that I learned the real estate investing stuff from, him and his the other owner were sitting across from me in my office at my desk, and he said, Jason, I know you think he was kind of being an ass, he's like, I know you think you're pretty cool because you're good at business and and this and that. And he goes, you're nobody special. I know a lot of people like you. I know a lot of people that can make millions of dollars and work 15 hours a day and neglect their family and neglect their friends and neglect themselves and neglect their relationships and neglect their kids. You're nobody special. And I mean, the first time I ever met this guy, and he says, and he goes, what would be really cool is if you could figure out how to make just as much, if not more money than you're making now in 2 or 3 hours a day instead of 15 hours a day. Now that would be impressive. And then spend the rest of your time doing something good. That would be impressive. And I dismissed it. I mean, I was aggravated. I mean, he was kind of like talking down to me, but he was doing it on purpose. He was doing it for a reason so that it would sink in. And the follow-up meeting, we sat down and he said, what would you like your life to look like if you didn't have to work, no business, no nothing, you woke up in the morning and life could be any way that you wanted it to be? What would it look like? I was 30 years old at the time. And I said, well, I guess if I didn't have a business, I would start another business. And he's like, no, you're not getting it. No work, no nothing. What would you do? And then I said, then I guess I'd help somebody else with their business. And he's like, no, man, what's wrong? Like, what do you like to do for fun? And as sad as this is, I was like deer in the headlights looking at him. And it was like, I remember it hit me like, how am I 30 years old and I can't answer the question, what do I like to do for fun? And the other guy that was in the room that knew me, he's like, don't you have a motorcycle? Don't you like to ride your motorcycle? He's like, when's the last time you rode it? I said, well, the tags are 3 years expired, so I'm guessing 3 years ago. And so we went through this whole process of building a life instead of building a business. And what he said is build your life first. Design what you want that to look like first, and then build a business that serves you instead of you serving it. I was an absolute slave to the first 2 businesses that I created. I sacrificed everything for them. And you know what? That was the most impactful shift in my thinking because, I was raised that your job as a man is to work and provide. And I still agree with that. I just associated hours a day to work. And, what if you could? What if you could get more accomplished in 3 hours a day than you can with 15? It didn't compute to me until I saw a whole lot of people doing it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
There's so many business success stories that exist out there, and you mentioned Tony Robbins. If you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating or inspirational and you could spend time with them, who would it be?
It'd probably be him, or I know that you're gonna get a mixed reaction about this, but I think Elon Musk is doing a lot of cool work in the world too, man. So it'd be a close between Tony and Elon. I just you never know somebody's true intentions, but to push things forward as much as he is, I just think he's a super interesting guy.
Yeah, and he's always number one on the list, either him or Oprah, one of the
Really?
two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they're always top on the list. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You know, you've obviously accumulated a lot of wisdom. You've been through a lot in your life. So if you ran into the 18-year-old version of you in a dream tonight, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
You know, it would definitely be it would definitely first be, you know, make time for yourself, make time to meet your own needs. It's great to serve, but you also have to you have to fill your own cup up so that you can fill other people's cup up. And then the second half of that would be, you know, keep doing what makes you better. When I was 18, 19 years old, when I read that book, and then, you know, I started this morning routine, and I would read and I'd put good stuff in and I would study something, and I had these breathing exercises, all this stuff. And I grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And then when 2010 hit and I got wiped out, I I stopped doing those things. And I didn't consciously realize that I stopped doing those things, but I did. And so when I got back on my feet and, you know, we had success again, but I wasn't, I just kind of stayed in like a comfort zone. I kind of stayed in this safe place. And, you know, we don't grow inside our comfort zone. We grow when we get outside of our comfort zone. We don't if we're not growing, we're dying. We gotta be moving forward, and we've got to be progressing at something to feel good. And I quit progressing. That went on for almost 7 8 years.
Yeah.
And I said, enough's enough. I got to get up and because I kind of lost the passion. I kind of lost the feel good part of it. And it's wild how much this thing controls, you know, our emotional state, what we focus on, the meaning that we give it impacts everything in our life.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, the question that you got asked years ago. Outside of work, what do you like to do? What is it that you like to do these days?
I appreciate that. The first thing that I wanted to do that I did back then that I still enjoy is flying. And, you know,
Nice.
my dad flew. I didn't have a really close relationship, but he flew. My grandpa flew a plane. And so the guy that's mentoring me said, "Well, do you want to fly a plane?" I was like, "No, I want to fly a helicopter because you can land that sucker in the backyard if you want to, you know." So that was a super cool experience. Something that I probably would have never done had I not, you know, something that I always wanted to do. Um, I still have a motorcycle and I enjoy that. I'm not crazy on it. It's just like yesterday, it was a nice day, and or the day before Monday, and, you know, just get out and cruise a little bit,
Yeah.
clear your mind, be grateful for the sun and the wind and just life here on Earth while we have it, because it's not that long. So those are two cool things I enjoy, and I love travel. I love outside of the U.S. travel, especially like just different cultures, different people. It's good to remove yourself from your environment sometimes and just see how other people live. You know, I've gone to some really poor third world countries and saw how happy the people are that have, by our definition, nothing, and it's always so impactful.
It's amazing. There's a show, Rainn Wilson from The Office. He has a show that just came out, and he does that. He travels around the world to find out
Really?
who's the happiest because he's always been a little depressed. You know, he's had all this
Wow,
stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he just hasn't really been fully happy. So one of the happiest places, the first show that he went to was Iceland. And they were just talking about how the population pivots because of the weather. Everything's beautiful there, the hot springs and all this stuff. So let me ask you this. Of all
Yeah.
of the places that you've been to, what was one of the most beautiful, unexpectedly magical places that you've traveled to?
I'll give you two quick ones. One is we did a mission trip to Guatemala, and that was super cool. And that one was after the first trip I went to Liberia, West Africa,
Wow.
and I went with some acquaintances that asked to borrow money for a business that they had. They were import export diamonds, gold, different. They had an import export license, that kind of thing, and they asked for a pretty significant sum of money. And I said, for what? And they said, for diamonds. And I was like, oh yeah, right. You know what I mean? It just sounded, it still is crazy, but it sounded super crazy. And so I said, you know, we're not we're not doing that. But what we can do is if you guys are really serious, I'll go with you and check it out. If it is what it says it is, then maybe I'll be an investor in it. And we went over there and we went way out into the jungle, into actual diamond pits and diamond mines. And I remember we were standing down in this pit, and all the kids were standing around the rim of the pit. Little kid, and they're just standing there, kind of hands behind their back or at their sides, super quiet, not making a noise. And my buddy Mickey that we went with, he's a diamond cutter. He says, I was like, "What are they doing?" And he says, "Throw them your apple core." I just got done eating this apple. I was getting ready to throw the core down. And he said, "Throw them the apple core." And I didn't. I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Just do it." And so I launched this core up there. The oldest kid caught it. As soon as he caught it, all the younger kids got in the line, and he broke little pieces off of this apple core, and he got to the very end, and there was none left for him. And man, it freaking hit. So the next day, I'm taking all the pillowcases out of the hotel, and we're stuffing all the food, breakfast food in there. We come back with a truck full of stuff. We sent a whole container back after we got home, but just they didn't ask for money, they didn't ask for help, they didn't ask for anything. And they're playing with a water bottle that they made wheels on with bottle caps, and they were just, I remember walking up to that tribe, and this 80-year-old man who's sitting on a bucket because they don't have chairs, they don't have running water, they don't have air conditioning, they don't have doors, they don't have cell phones, they don't have cars, they don't have anything. And I remember this 80-year-old man standing, I mean, he could barely stand up. And he says, "Sit," he's giving me a shit. Just the love and compassion and kindness had an ever-changing impact. And I remember when I got back from that, I'm like, you know what? All this stuff that I'm letting stress me out, overwhelm me, all this business stuff, all this life stuff, I need to learn a lesson from this. And the lesson is just be happy and be grateful. I mean, it has such a big impact. And sometimes less is more. I mean, I like nice things like anybody else, but not when we're slaves to them, not when we're indebted to them. If I can't write a check for something, that means I can't pay for it. And they lived a much more cohesive, happy existence.
That's the amazing thing about travel is that
Yeah,
we need to see that more. That's what we need to see, because it really is, surviving on this planet and finding happiness is vastly different for so many people, and
100%. And we live in this bubble where
yeah.
what we see is all we know, and there's no perspective. So when you see this, it kind of helps put you in balance a little bit.
It's like those whole third world SNL skits. It's like third world problems.
Yeah.
When you see these people that are just literally trying to get an apple core to stay alive that day, that's
Yeah.
mind blowing. That's
and
crazy.
and and just and just and they weren't even going to ask for it. Just happy as can be. It was such a cool, yeah, so
Yeah,
crazy.
that's wild. So, of all of the things that you've done in your life that you've overcome and become, what are you the proudest of?
It's a good question. I don't know if proudest is the answer, but I think I would kind of circle it back to just the wildness of how life works. And what I mean by that is, sometimes some of the most painful things that we go through in life, we're supposed to go through them. And if they weren't that painful, we wouldn't get the message to change and be better. And so I think about, like, had I not gotten wiped out when I did, had the Mark '07 not happened and brought our country and the world for the most part to its knees, I'd probably still be working 80 hours a week running that mortgage company. I would probably still have an unhappy relationship because you can't be present for somebody when you're working 80 hours a week. I'd probably still feel super unfulfilled. Had that not happened, and it really spawned everything else. It spawned that moment where the gentleman crossed my path that said what he said that made me say, okay, I've got to share this kind of message with people. I guess it's different for everybody, but there's nothing that makes me feel better than feeling like I had an impact, a positive impact, a life-changing impact like that gentleman had on me in someone else's life. So to be able to have the opportunity to share with somebody or teach somebody something that forever impacts them, I'm proud of that, even though it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I was blessed to be put into that place.
So, at the end of the day, Jason, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Great question, man. You're asking some good ones today.
Yeah, I'm getting in there. We're waking up.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I Good question. I've never been asked that before. I guess my perception of me, I hope how other people see me is somebody that works hard, somebody that gives first before they ever ask for anything, somebody that is a change maker, a life impactor, somebody that that loves first, that cares first, somebody that wants to leave everybody better than they found them.
Great answer, man. So if anyone wants to learn more about you, reach out, hire you, anything about your world, what do they do?
Yeah, first of all, you can go to www.ultimatesuccessblueprint.com/neonjazz, and I created so I have a course that I sell for a couple $1,000. It's a 16-week training on how to totally rewire your subconscious. All those things that we kind of talked about in the beginning of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
I'm covering that, but then like who am I today? Who do I want to be? The person that you want, the things that you want to have, the house that you want to have, whatever, that person has different beliefs than the person you are today. The reason why you can't lose the 20 pounds isn't because you're not going to the gym. It's because you have an identity around who you currently are. If you identified as that person, you would do what that person did. So I help people really rewire that at a subconscious level. And so I took that 16-week training and just condensed it down to about 2 hours into a course where people can do this at home. And for anybody that's listening that says, man, I think I could get something out of that, it's completely free if you jump over and use that link. You've got to use the Neon Jazz extension though, otherwise it's $19.90, $2,000, so it's completely free. Download that from there. I think it'll have an impact.
I'm going to put it in the show notes. Jason, this has been fascinating. Thank you, sir, for your
Awesome,
story.
man.
This is wonderful.
Thank you for having me. Next time I'm in Kansas City, we'll get together.
Oh, dude, absolutely. Yeah, let me know. Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
Appreciate
man.
it.